I was thinking about this today. Catholics. And I know Catholics are the people that people in other religions love to make fun of.
They tossed 3/4 of the book of the Bible in the trash. 3/4 of it.
Well, they didn't, actually.
They
What do you
didn't?
mean? They didn't toss it in the trash. What you mean they didn't canonize it?
They didn't give, well, the same difference. I mean,
No,
they
that's
didn't
not the same
canonize
thing. Jews also didn't canonize many books. The Book of the Maccabees is a book that's highly praised in the Jewish world, but it's not part of our canon. For example, Beit Shammai never held Megillas Esther to be important enough to enter the canon, but they still held that it was a halacha to recite it during Purim. Also, Ben Sira, Josephus, there's actually a Hebrew version that was found. Rashi quotes Josephus, but the only version we have now is the Latin one.
Well, there are some books that that the Catholics did in fact destroy, though. I thought there was.
If they did destroy them, I guess we'll never know if they really existed.
Well, yeah.
But only because something's not canonized doesn't mean that.
Well, I know the Gnostic Gospels are out there. I know they're out there.
All right, so the Protestants canonized less books than the Catholics. The Catholic Bible has more apocryphal books than the Protestant Bible. So, I mean, why not attack the Protestants even more?
Yeah.
I was thinking of idolatry and what that really means. And I was thinking one of the most influential rabbis in Christian-Jewish relations nowadays is Tovia Singer. And I think that he has poisoned the thinking of many people in a non-halachic manner just because he presents his arguments, and they're good arguments, but they're typically presented from a Karaite perspective. They're not presented from a rabbinic perspective. Now, he doesn't believe the Karaite perspective because he believes in Kabbalah, and he believes in halacha, and he believes in rabbinic literature. I mean, this is how Michael Brown was able to stump him in a debate. He pulled out some medrash somewhere, and then Tovia Singer, he didn't say, oh, it's just a medrash. Tovia Singer stayed quiet because he realized, you got me, because I believe in this also. When Tovia Singer is presenting Satan, let's say, or dualism as a limitation of God, he doesn't acknowledge that he's also a dualist. He'll present Judaism from a Karaite perspective, and he'll say that according to Tanakh, the only glimpse we have of Satan is what appears in the book of Job. It's true. According to the book of Job, Satan works for God, does not have any free will. He does what God tells him to do. Fine, 100%. This is not the way Jews view it in the Talmud at all. I mean, one, by the simple fact that we have demons.
You will. Yeah. Okay. See, that was the distinction I was going to make, because from my perspective, as a former Christian and now an eclectic pagan, my perspective on the whole matter was that Satan was a title. It was a title. It meant accuser of the brethren. Well, an accuser of the brethren could be anybody. It could be you. It could be me. It could be John. It could be yes, a demon.
So that's a Karaite perspective. It's not a rabbinic perspective. The rabbinic perspective teaches also, just like, I mean, the Christians didn't make this up, that Satan is almost like a rogue demon that fights against God. It goes both ways.
Okay.
According to the book of Job, yes, it's correct that he works for God and he's just there to make you look bad in front of God, but God hired him.
Right.
But the notion of Satan, and it says clearly that Satan is the Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination, that Satan is also the angel of death, not to mention all the demons and Samael. Well, Samael is the prince of demons. Now, how is Judaism not dualistic? It's the same thing. I have this attraction to truth. I have to call things how I see it, because people leave Christianity and they come to Judaism and they realize, you know what, this is the same crap. In terms of dualism, of good fighting evil. Now, it's true. According to the Torah, there's no such thing as dualism. Even Tanakh, there's only God, and if there is some sort of angel or an accuser, he's working for God and he doesn't even have free will. But rabbinic literature doesn't teach it like that. And it's kind of disingenuous for someone to attack Christianity when all these ideas originated from Jewish sources. But anyways, I was thinking about idolatry today. And one of the biggest attacks that Protestants make on Catholics, and now students of the kind of missionary rabbis, is that Catholics worship statues. And I was thinking, is this true? Do Catholics really worship statues from a Jewish perspective?
I don't know.
That worship in Judaism doesn't really mean worship. It's because we're stuck with these English words. Idolatry doesn't mean idolatry. Worship doesn't mean worship. Okay. Idolatry in Hebrew is understood to mean avodah zarah, even though the Torah doesn't even use that title for it. The rabbis do. So avodah zarah literally means foreign worship, something that's strange or doesn't appear in Torah.
Right.
Now,
I know the evangelicals have a problem with them because they believe that the Catholics are praying to Mary, who was simply a human being. She was.
But where does it say that prayer in itself is idolatry?
Well, hey, I don't shoot the messenger, okay?
I'm giving Jews the benefit of the doubt here.
Right.
And the reason this crosses my mind is because Jews do pray through dead rabbis. As much as they don't acknowledge it, they do it, okay? You
really?
know, of course.
They invoke, okay, now, see, you've just totally blown my mind, because this is something I didn't know. They actually invoke the name of a dead rabbi when they pray.
No. Jews don't do this as part of the liturgy. I'm saying that there are Jews who are mystically inclined, mainly those in Hasidic groups, that go to graves and pray over the grave of a dead rabbi in his merit, right? But in front of the cadaver. In other words, if it was just praying completely only by his merit, why can't you do that from home? Why do you have to be in front of the body? And why would you then write letters to the deceased?
That sounds eerily a lot like this Saturnalia crap that's going down in Central America and parts of South America.
Yeah, but the thing is, this technically is not idolatry.
Really?
Because they're not worshiping. This is why we have to use even scales here. If Jews are going to pray to rabbis, and what do you think writing a letter to a dead rabbi is? Like, you're beseeching the dead. Okay.
Yeah, but isn't that necromancy, and isn't it forbidden?
Well, not necessarily, because they're not expecting that deceased individual to grant the prayer. They're expecting that person as a tzaddik or a holy person to deliver the prayer to God. And this is really what the Catholics have been doing all along.
I was going to say, isn't that kind of like what the Pope does?
Right. So it's absolutely foolish. But I don't think it's idolatry. How can you compare that to the real worship of other gods, foreign gods that actually had a mode of service and worship? Like Baal Peor, that would expect you to defecate in front of the statue. Every god had a mode of worship.
Yeah.
Molech.
Right. Yeah. Don't get me started on Moloch.
So the way
Moloch, Tubal, and Baal, the big three, man. Yeah.
So the way this Avodah Zarah was worshipped was by passing your children through the fire. Now, the rabbis debate what that actually meant, if it involved killing the baby or not. So some say it didn't involve killing the baby. It was just in some way passing over it, but not killing the child. Anyways, every god had a mode of worship. This is not what the Catholic Church does. The Catholic Church does virtually the same act that Hasidim do, those in the Hasidic movement. They venerate saints. Now, what's a saint? A saint is a tzaddik. It's the same thing. It's a holy person that, and you're really, now clearly they're wrong. They're Catholic. They're Christian. I mean, they're not promoting Torah. But I'm trying to analyze the act of veneration of saints with veneration of rabbis in the Hasidic world. And it's virtually identical. So I don't consider there, only because there happens to be a stone statue of Mary or Peter or St. Francis, that is not idolatry. Because the command in the 10 statements of the 10 commandments says, don't make a graven image of anything above or anything below, that you should come to worship it.
Right.
Not just not make it. It says don't make it in order to worship it. Now, guys, don't get me wrong. Look, Catholicism is idolatry. Mainstream Christianity is idolatry, but for different reasons. For different reasons. Anyone who says that the Torah has been done away with is an idolater, 100%. That's not even the argument here. I don't want anyone to think that I'm promoting Christianity in any way. I'm just trying to get people to think clearer. However, the exception I have always made is with Messianic Jews, or people who try to keep Torah Shabbat Peh and Torah Shabbat Tav to the best of their ability, but just happen to believe in JC to whatever extent. Now, this is why even beseeching a rabbi with a message or a prayer, praying in the merit of a dead rabbi, is also not idolatry. And I know there's a lot of people.
And to go back to your point, and this maybe put this a nice little wrap up bow on this. You're saying that people like Rabbi Tovia Singer, he teaches Torah from a Karaite perspective, even though he's a mystic, he's a Kabbalist, he's
right.
this, he's that, he's the next thing. But maybe this is really the basics or the fundamentals of how one should teach. Get back to the root of it. I mean, think outside the box, right? I mean, this is what isn't this what you're trying to do? Like bring people back down to the base level of things and not worry about all that extra layers that are on top. Maybe he does personally believe that stuff. And same thing with me. I love Hasidut. I'm not going to teach people, as an example we always give, putting on 2 pairs of tefillin is going to feed poor people in Africa. Obviously, I'm not going to teach someone that from a basic perspective. I might say that maybe in a Kabbalistic way that does happen. I don't know. But you get what I'm trying to say. But maybe that is a good thing. Maybe teaching people from a basic...
I understand what you're trying to say. However, it seems a bit hypocritical if he himself doesn't believe it and he's just doing it to destroy Christianity because he believes pretty much the same thing. I'm just trying to see if people are consistent. And I feel that if you're basically teaching the same thing, I believe Christianity came out of Gnostic Judaism.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Have a more open mind. Now, clearly, I don't want people praying to saints and statues and, but
not.
As someone who has discussions with people online, it's hard for me not to be honest about what we do compared to what they do and then call them wrong and we tolerate the same thing.
Yeah, what you're saying is if you're going to call it all out, let's call everybody out, not just a certain group. Yeah.
But I've taken a different approach. Instead of attacking Christianity for this, it's allowed me to accept Kabbalistic Jews and Hasidic Jews as brothers, but just mistaken, just like I view Messianics. In other words, accepting Chabad has allowed me to accept Messianics or people who behave like Chabad as well. If you accept Chabad and tolerate praying to or through some dead Messiah, then you also have to tolerate it being done to a guy named Jesus. I mean, we have to be honest here, okay?
So maybe this is why there was a leniency for sheet tooth, because it seems like what you're saying is could fall under that umbrella that people have a misconception or their perspective of what God is a little distorted. So there's a leniency for that little not okay belief.
So the idea of sheet tooth is mentioned by Tosfos in the Ramah, but only for Gentiles. They view that shituf is not allowed for Jews. Like Ramah,
because Jews should be a little bit better than that. We shouldn't be necessarily worshiping saints and tzaddikim.
Right.
Trying to hold them to a higher standard.
Yeah, but they're not worshiping them. That's the thing. I don't believe anyone's worshiping the Rebbe.
Okay, right. Okay, back to the right.
But they're venerating them. I'm trying to call things out as I see them, and I don't see what Catholics do with statues as one being any different than what the Hasidic Jews do with their dead masters.
And as long as they're not worshiping it, you don't seem to have a problem, right?
Only because someone. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He makes it pretty clear in the Torah that when he gets angry, whenever we go off and to another path, another religion, this, that, worshiping the golden calf.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about here. I mean, this isn't another path, but this is the same God.
Christianity. But how can you say? Go ahead. What were you going to say? Wait, Christianity is the same
a different religion. They're venerating. If you're venerating the Rebbe, you think that he's a tzaddik because he's keeping God's commandments, because he worships also the one true God. It's different than God's sentiment in the Bible of you worshiping Baal. I mean, I think that's evident that foreign gods in the Bible are not akin to a religion that happens to also worship the same God of Israel, but has a distorted view on how we treat his saints.
So you wouldn't consider JC, Yashka, and the religion of Christianity as a different path?
Well, let's talk about it and see how is it really a foreign religion. It's wrong. again, I think it takes a mature person to acknowledge that something could be wrong and not idolatrous. I mean, like, we need a more diverse dictionary. We just can't always call everything idolatry. You know,
idolatry is a vodasora, right? Foreign worship, not the prescription of how Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants to be worshipped, right? Wants to be serviced, right? As God.
Right.
So Jesus Christ, the way he serviced is by believing that he died for your sins. That's a foreign concept, the foreign worship.
No. Hold on. That's not a service. To believe something is not a service. And that doesn't meet the criteria of worship. I mean, I know it's easy and it feels good to bash Christians, but we have to be honest. So the halakhic standard is like taking a poop in front of Baal PR, right? That was the way he was personal service, right? Okay, so what's the Christian definition? What's the Christian definition of service in Jesus Christ? Yeah, but Jesus Christ doesn't claim to be a separate individual from God. He claims to be God. And I mean, if he did claim it, he claims to be an extension of God. It's more of a partnership. It's not a foreign God.
But Jesus Christ tells us in the New Testament how he wants to be serviced. You have to walk in his ways.
No. He said to do that to worship the God of Israel.
God of Israel doesn't tell us to do that. So he's telling us an incorrect form of worshiping HaKadosh. Jesus Christ is a false teacher. He's telling us to worship Avodah Zorah. No.
He said, I do as I see my Father do. And if you believe in the Father, then you believe in me. Why? Not because I'm necessarily a saint or a Messiah or whatever, but because I'm doing what the Father is doing.
They ask him how to be good, and he says, keep all the mitzvot. And then he goes further. Sell everything you own and give it to the needy. Now, again, I'm not endorsing Christianity, but this is not avodah zarah, someone who's telling you to keep mitzvot. And if someone throws something into the mix, like many Hasidic or just Jewish groups do nowadays, there are many things we do nowadays that don't appear in the Torah. So yes, only because the concept is foreign to the Torah doesn't mean that it's necessarily avodah zarah. And I think the criteria is if it destroys portions of the Torah. But regarding JC, it seems that at least within the Gospels, I'm not even talking about Paul here. I think, again, traditional mainstream Christianity and also Catholicism is idolatry. But just analyzing the man at JC, he's basically saying that his commandments are God's commandments. This is what he requires you to do. No?
Okay. Only difference is that he says the only way to get to the Father is through me. There's the big difference. Him being the possible Messiah, the only big difference is that you have to go through me to get to the Father.
The Torah never tells you how to get to the Father because the Torah doesn't talk about an afterlife. Judaism has the same thing. With Judaism has rabbis and groups. There's certain groups that believe and go out of their way to try to convince other Jews to join their movement, that God will be pleased with them if they study Hasidut, if they follow a certain rabbi. See, the thing is, we have to get in the habit of saying that someone could be horribly wrong, but not idolatrous. Why does that word idolatry comes in? We have to be very careful when we call someone an idolater. Idolaters, according to the Torah, have to be put to death. So you're telling me that God would put someone to death who, I'm not saying Christians, I mean someone who kept the Torah fully, but happens to also take the New Testament as holy as a Kabbalist takes the Zohar? I don't see that. Idolatry is a heavy term. Let's just say they're wrong. No, but we have to use the worst. So we have to equate them to worshiping foreign gods, like worshiping actual idols. You know, I mean, people were sacrificed to other gods. I mean, how is someone who claims to be the Jewish Messiah, who was an ethical person, you know, for all intents and purposes, how can we equate that to barbaric, unethical idolatry? I think that God's going to hold it against us and say, you know what? You're being dishonest, because Jews have very similar ideas. Like when Chabad says that a Rebbe is the divine essence in bodily form, and they could get away with that. But when Colossians says it about Jesus, they cannot. I think they're both wrong.